a warm welcome at this early hour on the Saturday morning. So early indeed that I rather thought it went back just to talking to each other. And I would explain away asking members to the speaker by saying that they were attending the Queen's birthday celebration. Since our honest of Paynout will be celebrating monarchy. The classic date for is a coincidence due to the fact that they died in June 1809, and we hold our annual meetings at that date as possible. It's also ironic that our new president, Melvyn Bragg, who is full title Lord Bragg of Richmond, can't be with us today, as he is up north supporting the Remain campaign of the Labour Party. And that's great for lost causes all the time. Last night he was actually in Carlisle promoting or trying to persuade visitors to vote to stay in the European Union in the referendum. Whether Payne would take the same side is a moot question, I guess. Brexiters could cite common sense in support of their cause. Payne wrote it after all to persuade Americans to exit the British Empire. He answered those who argued it would bring about the collapse of the American economy, saying, quote, "It is the commerce and not the conquest of America by which England is to be benefited. And that would, in a great measure, continue were the countries as independent of each other as France and Spain. Because in many articles, neither can go to a better market." So the Brexiters could cite that as showing that Payne would be on their side. On the other hand, the Remain campaign could claim him as a supporter in the debate on what might be called a referendum in the United States, for instance, over whether or not to adopt the Constitution of 1787. Payne sided with the Federalists, who urged the individual states to sacrifice some of their sovereignty to the Union. That's to say, Payne can be personally conservative, but for almost any cause. He was almost all for the four men. Never was a public character so suddenly exalted to the very pinnacle of fame, or so precipitately hurled into disgrace, as Panther observed of Tom Payne in 1794. One day he was admired as a profound politician and adored as a champion of liberty. The next day he was branded as an enemy to his king and country, a traitor, a swindler, equally destitute of principles and abilities. Payne's image varied and still varies, it seems to me, depending on the politics of the observer. By and large, in Britain, those on the left revere him, while those on the right revile him. Radicals applaud him as the apostle of the welfare state, while conservatives reject him as a revolutionary who threatened to overthrow the monarchy and the whole social order. In America, too, Payne is a divisive figure. However, in the United States, the lines have grown very differently. Where the British, by and large, reject Payne's republicanism, the vast majority of Americans are Republicans with a small r. From this point of view, Payne has been recognized as a founding father, albeit with rather small f, not quite on the par with those who made capital as founding fathers. Until recently, conservatives in the United States used to share the negative image of Payne with their counterparts in Britain. But late, however, some prominent people on the American right have enrolled him in their cause, claiming that he advocated limited government. I think of the Tea Party and Glenn Beck, for instance, but I think in public strange edition of common sense in support of the right and the view that Payne advocated limited or minimal government. So Fred Kostler, an historian who recently looked at all these different views of Payne, saw a very motley gang being recruited to Paynites. A quick survey of the internet, observes Kostler, uncovered a polyglot collection of Payne devotees, libertarians, socialists, pacifists, atheists, hyper-patriotic American conservatives, cosmopolitan progressives, multiculturalists, opponents of multiculturalism, rural survivalists, technophilic bloggers, and many more. I have to say, Payne can be recruited for almost any cause. One of the themes of this symposium is Payne's attitude towards the state, for instance. And in this too, his thinking does appear to be, if not contradictory, at least paradoxical. To the left, he sketched out the case for what ultimately became the welfare state. To the right, he is a champion of small government. Is it possible to reconcile these two views of Payne? Is a small governmental apparatus compatible with the administration of marriage and child allowances, old age pensions, and all the welfare schemes that Payne devised? What sort of bureaucracy did Payne envisage as administering his welfare provisions if it wasn't the state? Payne's negative view of government was made clear in the very opening remarks of the first major work, Common Sense. Famous words, society is produced by our wants, government by our wickedness. The former promotes our happiness positively by uniting our affections, the latter negatively by restraining our vices. Society in every sense is a blessing, but government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil, in its worst state, an intolerable one. Common Sense, of course, contained no provisions for welfare schemes, and it could be thought that when Payne turned his mind to those, his view of the role of government might change too. But not a bit of it. In the second part of Rights of Man, where he first laid out his ideas for old age pensions, etc., he denounced, quote, the greedy hand of government, thrusting itself into every corner and crevice of industry, grasping the spoil of the multitude. Invention is continually exercised to furnish new pretenses for revenue and taxation. It watches prosperity as its prey and permits none to escape without attributing to it. Now, Payne did draw a quite distinct difference between central and local government. To him, the central government was the monarchy, and its appurtenances, the court, the peerage, the army and the navy. All the monarchical governments are military, claimed Payne. War is their trade, plunder and revenue their object. They required inordinate sums to be raised by taxation in order to sustain them. He distinguished between monarchical government, which was primarily concerned with foreign relations, and local, or what he called civil government, which he maintained was, quote-unquote, republican government. As he explained in Rights of Man Part 1, quote, all that part of the government of England which begins with the office of constable and proceeds to the department of magistrate, quarter sessions, general assizes, including trial by jury, is republican government. In this view of the case, we have two distinct characters of government. The one, the civil government, or the government of laws, which operates from home, the other, the court or cabinet government, which operates abroad. The one attended with little charges, the other with boundless extravagance. The Payne's distinction has received confirmation from some modern historians. The apparatus of central government has been described as the fiscal military state, while that of local government has recently been described as, quote, the unacknowledged republic, unquote. The fiscal military state, while it can be traced back into the Cromwellian period and even beyond, evolved rapidly after the Glorious Revolution of 1688. The revolution brought about a realignment in British foreign policy from one where Charles II and James II sought to align Britain with France to one where the post-revolutionary rulers of Britain were opposed to the Dutch. In the 126 years between 1689 and 1815, Britain was engaged in war with France for as many as 66. These wars proved to be unprecedentedly expensive. They necessitated heavy taxation, both direct and indirect, to finance the military and naval forces raised to fight them. The main direct tax was on rental incomes, which were levied at a rate of 20% during the war recent period. The principal indirect taxes were customs and excises on a widening range of consumer goods. And these became an increasing burden as the century progressed, where in 1720 direct taxes constituted 38% of the state's revenue. By 1780 they came to just 20%. The shift to indirect taxation gave rise to complaints that the poor were paying disproportionately, especially since such necessities as candles, leather, salt, and soap were subject to excise duties. Plain calculated that the revenues from taxation had risen from an annual average of £500,000 in 1566 to £1,800,000 in 1666 to £17 million by 1791. The difference, he concluded, is so astonishing as to warrant the opinion that the national character of the English has changed. It might be thought exaggerated, yet modern estimates of the annual revenues bear him out. If anything, he underestimated the increase, as the actual yield from taxation in 1791 was not 17 million, but 18,500,000. When it is considered that the pay of the Army, Navy, and of all the revenue officers they pay is the same now as it was about 100 years ago, it appears impossible to account for an enormous increase in expenditure on any other ground than extravagance, corruption, and intrigue. In fact, most of the money raised was spent on warfare, which took up on average between 75 and 85% of the government's expenditure during the 18th century. It enabled Great Britain to raise an army of 200,000 and more during the armed conflict, though, of course, in the intervals of peace it was reduced to between 12 and 20,000. It also enabled her to mobilize over 100,000 sailors to man the biggest navy in the world. Payne perhaps naively thought that if Britain were to be transformed from a monarchy to a republic, and the rest of Europe followed suit, it would not require these resources, since republics did not fight other republics. And this would release the taxes raised to wage wars for welfare. The question is, how were these resources to be raised and distributed? If the central government assumed responsibility for the administration of those welfare schemes, then it could justify the seen as the profit of the welfare state. But if his intention was that they should be administered by the local authorities whom he regarded as operating as republican governments, then it would be legitimate to claim that he did not intend to involve the state at all. For historians investigating local government in the early modern period have endorsed Payne's view that it could be regarded not as an extension of the central government, but as a separate republican system. The counties, the boroughs, above all the parishes of early modern England were by and large governed by unpaid amateurs. The Lord Lieutenants, Justices of the Peace and Sheriffs, who were the chief county officials, were appointed directly by the Crown. But the mayors, aldermen, and councillors of the boroughs were chosen by the inhabitants of it, as number in many cases. But above all, the church wardens, overseers of the poor, and constables were elected by the parish vestry, the electorate being those who paid the poor. The Poor Law Commissioners, who were set up to investigate the administration of what came to be called the Old Poor Law, observed in 1833 that, good as things now are, each parish is an independent nation, and they referred to all the English parishes as, quote, 14,000 republicans. If it was this system of poor relief that Payne had in mind to implement his welfare scheme, then it could be concluded that he did not seek to extend the role of what he viewed as the state. Although he never used that word, the state, at least in that way the term welfare state implies. That I would say in a welfare, but a fairly systematic search shows that Payne occasionally does say the state when his meaning more or less its modern meaning, but very, very rare. However, although his ideas on the administration of its proposal are sketchy and nowhere fully developed, he did not seek to grasp it onto the existing parochial system. I was disappointed about that. I thought, oh yes, what it's done is to use the parochial regime as a Republican sort of government for his welfare schemes. But the more I looked, the less convincing that proposal was. On the contrary, he proposed dispensing with the old poor law and replacing it with a new one based on his proposals. By the operation of this plan, he stated, the poor laws, those instruments of civil torture, will be superseded. The hearts of the humane will not be shocked by ragged and hungry children and persons of 70 and 80 years of age begging for bread. The dying poor will not be dragged from place to place to bleed their lives as a reprisal of parish upon parish. Tom wrote about the administration of poor laws from personal experience, having served as a member of the Vestry St. Michael's Church in Lewis while he was resident there. He himself has supported a resolution on the 2nd of August 1772, quote, that the parish officers do immediately get an order to remove Anna Hood to the parish he belongs to, unquote. This resolution was in conformity with the poor law, which laid down that paupers were only eligible for relief from the parish where they had a settlement, usually the one where they had been born, although you could obtain a settlement by other means too. Those unable to claim a settlement could be forcibly removed to a parish where they had one, a practice being supported in Lewis but deplored in Rathdown. By contrast with the existing poor law administration, the implementation of his proposals would ensure that, quote, widows will have maintenance for their children, and children will no longer be considered as increasing the distress of their parents. The haunts of the wretched will be known, because it will be to their advantage, quote. Payne was not very explicit about how the new system would be administered. Apparently, the poor rates were to be abolished along with the poor laws. For Payne suggested that, quote, the money necessary for the churches can be drawn from the excise collections, which are made 8 times a year in every market town in England, quote. Although he insisted that by contrast with the central government, the localities were governed with little charges, in fact, the poor rates were regarded increasingly as a burden at the time. In 1783, poor relief cost just under 2 million, while 20 years later it was over 4 million. Early in 1791, Payne himself raised the topic of the poor rate at a dinner, where he found himself sitting next to Thomas Ruggles, a justice of the peace in Essex and Suffolk, and an authority on the poor law who wrote a book on it. Ruggles recorded how, quote, Mr. Payne told me he was informed I paid great attention to the situation of the poor and the laws respecting them, and asked me what I thought of the poor rate. When Ruggles replied he thought it evil, Payne replied, quote, I'm just returned from Texas, where my grandfather was overseer about half a century ago. I have just seen the rates for his half year. They were under £40. I think it said 34. What do you think they are this present half year sales? They are between £300 and £400. In a short time, if the deed had been off stock, the Friends of Liberty will with the greatest ease walk through the ruins of the boasted Constitution. Its fall wants no acceleration from the pen of Gallic freedom. To this, added Ruggles, a gentleman present instantly replied, Thomas, thy wish is farther for that thought. Apparently, Ruggles misheard Tom, for a search through the overseer's records for effective parishes revealed that his father, Joseph Payne, and not his grandfather, William, who had indeed acted as overseer for the poor in St. Cuthbert's Parish in 1739. Payne's proposal that the poor is to be abolished and replaced with the excise is very revealing. For one thing, it would substitute a direct tax on property with indirect taxes, which is hard to reconcile with the radical approach to redistribution is creditable. Perhaps it had more to do with his experience in the exile service than with his ideology. More to the immediate point, it would replace a local system of tourism with a national system of public welfare. The scheme to compensate people without landed property for the loss of their fair share of land, which he put forward in agrarian justice, was much more explicitly centralised, creating in every nation a national funding. Those who insist that Paine was advocating the welfare state are more in line with his thinking than those who see him as an advocate of small government. These divergent views of Paine can be anachronistic anyway, in the sense that people with critical ideologies that were non-existent in his day and have emerged since project them back onto him. So he can be seen as a proto-socialist from one point of view, a prophet of the Tea Party movement from another. In American presidential elections held in recent years, he has been enlisted by candidates on both sides. Barack Obama quoted him approvingly in his campaign, while Mitt Romney felt it was so important to cite him that he actually invented a quotation and edited it from his work in his bid for the White House. So far, at least, he has not speaking the campaign speech in the current campaign as far as I'm aware, which is this guy, it's not Donald Trump, I don't think it's about Paine. This unhistorical or ahistorical approach to political thinkers in the past has long been challenged by the so-called Cambridge School. Spearheaded by Quentin Skinner, this group of scholars insists that the thoughts of such philosophers as Thomas Hobbes and John Locke have to be partly placed in their historical context in order to avoid treating them anachronistically. This approach has not been systematically applied to Thomas Paine before. However, our first speaker, Jonathan Clark, is a member of the Cambridge School and is working on a monograph which displays Paine's thinking in its contemporary milieu. Some sparks from his amber have already shed light on his interpretation of Paine. The most recent was a controversial essay, this must be as far as I'm aware, was a controversial essay published in the Times Literary Supplement on 18th of September last year. Didn't it make some effort to, at least that's on the website, isn't it? But if people aren't aware of it, 5 copies of it. I won't be satisfied with it if that's okay. Professor Clark is no stranger to controversy. On the contrary, he served one of his very first contributions to British history in the 18th century. The prevalent interpretation of the days of time was it was characterized by the decline of divine right monarchy, the rise of an urban bourgeoisie, rivaling the ascendancy of aristocracy, and the emergence of secularism which marginalized Christianity in general and the established church in particular. He challenged all three assumptions, provocatively insisting that Britain in the 18th century shared all the characteristics of an Austro-Hungarian regime. The notion that absolutism had been replaced by limited monarchy in the Glorious Revolution, stripping it of its divinity, was in turn greatly exaggerated. Societies continued to be dominated by the aristocracy, which, if anything, increased its hegemony during the century. So far from being marginalized, the Church of England remained central to the Constitution, which was that of a confessional state. These bold claims were built lively at times heated debate. So when the dust settled, it was clear that Professor Clark's interpretation had to be taken seriously by every historian of late Stuart and Harry's early Britain. He succeeded in altering the agenda of historical inquiry, a major feat for any scholar. He also changed the agenda of students to Paine. For if divine right monarchy had received its death blow in 1688, why did Paine spend so much time in common sense attacking it? And if the aristocracy had lost its hegemony with the rise of an urban bourgeoisie, why did he devote so much of rights of man criticizing it? And if religion had lost out to secularization, why did he think it necessary to lambast it in the Age of Reason? Professor Clark, who is whole distinguished professor of British history at the University of Kansas, is currently exploring the implications of the interpretation of the 18th century for the appreciation of Tom Paine. Essentially, in this year, let's pose the question, but did Thomas Paine write the whole of Rightful Man? And if not, what does that mean for our understanding of the French Revolution? It's well been known that the Marquis of Lafayette had some impact and input into Rightful Man. Paine stayed with the Marquis in Paris while working on the tract. Lafayette himself wrote to George Washington in January 1790 that Paine was writing, quote, a brochure in which he would see a portion of my adventures, unquote. The brochure never appeared, and scholars have assumed that it was incorporated into passages in Rightful Man that deal with the French Revolution. These acted as a central role to Lafayette, and it has been surmised that he furnished some hints for the passages question. But Paine was not a witness to the events he wrote. Professor Clark, however, goes much further than acknowledging that Lafayette provided Paine with some information for his account of the French Revolution. Quote, his 6,000 word narrative is eloquent, idealistic, and visionary. There's indeed only one difficulty. Paine cannot have written it. He wrote it out, some of which he put in his own words, but he cannot have been the primary author in quote. He then makes a convincing case that Lafayette was the author. This created quite a stir in the British press. It even became the subject in the Guardian's facetious past note. However, Professor Clark was alleged to accuse Paine of plagiarism. Though he made no such accusation, this charge has been repeated elsewhere, most notably on the website of the American Thomas Paine Society. One contributor to the UK Society's website asked for his contribution to be removed from it when he learned that Professor Clark had been invited to talk at this symposium, saying that he was coded up to Paris. The title of Professor Clark's talk is Interpreting Thomas Paine. No,